Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Here at Cavness HR, we're doing a crowdfunding campaign on the Refunder platform. To learn more on how to become an early investor and the risk, go to refunder.com/CavnessHR. Our guest today is Arkady. Arkady, you really be great today.
Hey, thank you for having me today.
So let's talk about something like, a kind of a softball question. What's something you do for fun?
Snowboarding, drums, science fiction. I read a lot of science fiction, sometimes up until 4 a.m. My wife is kind of trying to pinch me, like, hey, stop, turn off the light and whatnot. Snowboarding is my favorite way to actually completely relax. Sports in general, surfing.
So I have to say something first, like, this is like first, right? You're the first, this first time I had a husband and wife on the podcast. Your wife was like a couple months ago. Oh. And I impressed her so much, like, my husband's coming on your podcast. You probably already asked him first. He probably no, he's coming on this podcast.
She was absolutely happy to be here, and she shared it with me, and I'm like, sure, how can I get there? She was like, okay. So she basically sold this experience to me, and I'm grateful to her for that.
How long have you been snowboarding? Like all your life? Or
25 years.
25 years, okay. Yeah.
Since I was 11, so pretty much my whole adult life. Yeah.
So do you ever go skiing, or is it just straight snowboarding?
Straight snowboarding. Okay. My whole life I've been snowboarding. My go-to joke is like, why do you need 4 different sticks if you can have one?
They can't argue that logic. Now, have you ever done any skateboarding?
Skateboarding, yes, quite a bit. When I was a teenager, mostly when I was maybe 13 to 17, like that. Never was a big fan.
Are they kind of the same thing, except one's on concrete, one's on snow? It's like the skill, like the turns and stuff, kind of the same, or it's totally different?
I would say they're totally different. I would say surfing has more similarities with snowboarding than skateboarding. Skateboarding is quite slow compared to snowboarding. You cannot really go fast. When I was skateboarding back in the days, when I was a teenager in the early 2000s, there were no proper skate parks in Moscow. So you couldn't go like ramp and whatnot, like proper skateboarding like Tony Hawk does. So all you have left is like curbs and some rails and things like that. So the speed is slow. Speed is low. So there is no excitement, no exhilarating rush like on a sport bike or on a snowboard. And you get bruised all the time, nonstop.
I mean, I'm sure if you fall snowboarding, it hurts, but it has to be different between concrete and snow when you fall.
I would say that on snowboard, majority of your falls are not serious, but if you really hurt yourself, you do hurt yourself. Like, I mean, concussion and broken bones, like you don't really bruise yourself much on snowboard after the initial phase when your knees are blue and your butt is blue when you just start. On skateboarding, however, you're constantly bruised. No matter how good you are, how great you are, you push your level all the time. And the whole fun in skateboarding is performing a specific trick, and you're pushing your trick level to the next one, There is no leisure kind of skateboarding like you can get on the snow.
Concrete's concrete,
Yeah.
A metal rail's a metal rail.
Yes.
A stair is a stair.
A stair is a stair, and it hurts.
And it's not like, they're not having all this. I'm sure they've had something on now, but back they used to skateboard like they have nothing on, right? You just your skin in shorts.
You still kind of like, if you go snowboarding today, and I'm very grateful to see that change, everybody wears helmet. Everybody is conscious about their head. 10, 15 years ago, it was not perceived as cool. But in skateboarding, it's still like that. Any kind of equipment, any kind of, protective pads on your knees, and you're immediately not cool.
Yeah, you're
when you're 14, it matters.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
So what's like the most outlandish trick you've done as a snowboarding?
Most what?
Most outlandish trick you've done, hardest trick you've done as a snowboarding?
Probably 720, Roto. Okay. 720. Back when I was riding, like seriously riding, not anymore, no. And I was doing some basic stuff and then dislocated my shoulder just this year. And I mean, like, basically 360. It's nothing complicated. And I've realized I'm not 18 anymore, Jason, That was a revelation.
How often do you get to go snowboarding now?
During the season, at least every week.
Wow.
Least every week, yes.
Where do you have? You go to the same place
Stevens
every time?
Pass.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got my Epic Pass, or what's the right name. And I go there every Wednesday. I don't ride on weekends ever.
Is there some type of like internal competition between snowboarders and skiers? Like,
Not as much as it was before.
okay.
I wouldn't say it was a competition. I would say it was more like cat and the dog, like interspecies inner fight. I think it is still very much like that in many countries, like in Europe. I don't see any conflicts here in the US. I haven't heard any comments or anything like that. I haven't. Yeah, I wouldn't say there is no friction anymore.
Is there a place like a bucket list place you want to go snowboarding at?
Probably, free riding in Chile, like heli riding in Chile would be fantastic, just from what I've heard. I've crossed a lot of these items from my bucket list back in the days. Like I've snowboarded across the whole Europe. Kamchatka, which is super wild. You get like a military helicopter, you pay in an envelope and whatnot, and they drop you off in a no man's land, and they say, "We never saw you. If something happens to you, that's on you. Don't expect any kind of rescue operations. This is all off books." No, it's like it adds, a thrill to that.
Yeah. You're like, I hope they're playing. I know they're playing, but this is a little too convincing.
that's they look serious when they say it. You really like, you don't want to mess up at that point.
So drums, how long have you been playing the drums?
Oh, just a year.
Okay, so pretty new.
Just a year in drums.
So why you pick that up for versus all the other instruments and hobbies you could do?
I never played any music instruments in my life, and honestly, it felt like a caveat, like a gap. It didn't feel right that I don't know how to play any music instruments. I like to paint. I painted quite a lot, and then I've painted this one large picture. It's 60 by 60 inches, and I just couldn't pick up the brush anymore. I was like, I just don't want. I don't know what do I want to paint. There was no. I couldn't start. Like this painting was difficult, and I was like, but I still need some place for creativity in my life, and what's better time than now to pick up some new stuff, musical instrument in that.
And you take a lesson from someone, you self-teaching yourself.
Yes, Nick is fantastic. So Nick's drum lessons, he's great. If you want, I can share the link later. You can share with your audience. He's one of the best teachers. He was advised to me by my professor from a business school, because he's also a drummer.
And do you have any favorite drummers through time?
No, I'm not ingrained in this community well enough to have favorite drummers. I like specific songs and I like specific drum lines, but for the love of God, I don't know what the name of a drummer is. I like Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
And excuse me for not knowing the name of the drummer. I actually don't know any names.
Yeah, I just know the band name too. Yeah,
exactly.
I see in my mind all the band members. I have no clue who the name is.
I mean, I can say like these guys from Rage Against the Machine, the face, but I will probably not be able to call the name of them.
So, what's been the hardest thing about becoming a drummer?
Oh, it's a horrible experience, honestly. Like, I would use a very vivid language if I didn't care enough for the people who listen to that. It is extremely humbling. Like when I just picked it up, one of my friends who is a longtime drummer, he said, you're going to suck for the next 6 months for sure. It's going to be really bad. And God, he was right. Like some simple things that now seem minuscule would take you weeks to figure it out. Your limbs are connected to each other. So if your left arm wants to do something, your left leg wants to start to follow the patterns. And if you need to disconnect them, it becomes a very difficult exercise. And then your arms want to go in the same pattern, and you need to disconnect your arms from each other, and then your arms from your legs, and it becomes very much a coordination experience.
Is you go one day, like in the future, like actually do like a live drum performance?
No.
A live audience or something?
No. I do not have any aspirations to be a live artist. In the same way, I don't have aspirations to become a commercial pilot, for example, although I have a license. The whole drumming experience for me is exclusively about embracing new skills and understanding and being able to play musical instruments, because you kind of with osmosis you get all this experience and you understand it better, you feel it better. In general, I think it's a very useful thing to do, to be able to play drums, to be able to play any musical instruments. It develops your brain.
The other thing is we have to learn new things all the time, right? It can't be stagnant. and learn something, right? Learn a code, learn to play the drums,
Exactly.
learn something, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. New language. Do something to make your brain work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to deteriorate very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. So how long have you had a commercial license?
I don't have a commercial
No.
license. I've got a pilot license.
Pilot license, okay.
Yeah.
So those are two different things.
Those are different things.
Okay.
Since 2020.
Okay.
I'm a COVID pilot. I was really like, you couldn't do anything. We were living here on the 2nd Avenue. You couldn't do anything in Seattle. Everything is closed. And I was working mad hours, like 10 hours a day, easily 6 days a week, which is norm for me, but it was especially gruesome at that moment. I was deeply involved in IT, and IT during COVID just exploded. The amount of work we had doubled overnight, basically. I had to get out of house to go and do something, and I picked up the pilot idea. I wanted to be a pilot for a long time, and I was like, okay, now is the best time I will ever have a chance.
And you still fly once in a while?
Yeah, I still fly once in a while, especially when my friends come over. Right, I still fly. Yeah.
Okay, so you have your own plane. You have like rent a plane out. How's that
I
work?
rent a plane.
Okay, is that like crazy expensive, or it's like pretty reasonable? Or I'm afraid the answer it depends.
It's roughly $200 an hour.
Okay.
So I would say wake surfing is more expensive.
Okay.
When you rent a boat and you surf, or like wakeboarding, I would say is more expensive than flying a plane.
And like, we want to rent a plane. Like, can you go like right now, call and say, I want to rent a plane in 2 hours, or you have to like give them like a week notice?
Week, 2 weeks. They
Okay.
have their own internal system that you go in online and book it, and like really good planes, some fresh planes that are in demand, could be booked out for like a month in advance. Some older planes could be available in a week or so. And
And you use the same people all the time?
say
You
what?
use the same people all the time?
People?
The same plane, the same company?
Oh, the same company.
Yeah.
Yeah, always
Okay.
the same company for sure. The school where I got my license, that's where I rent my plane from.
Like when you get a plane, like you have to like give me your flight plan. Like say, I want to fly from here to whatever place, or
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If you decide to fly from here to say Oregon, it's a good idea to file your flight plan, simply because
I would think so. Yeah.
somebody would track you. You would be handed off from the airport to the controller and so on and so forth. It's going to be, you're going to be safer. However, you are not required under visual flight rules to file a plan. And I only fly visual. I don't fly instruments, so I don't fly when the weather is bad, for example. Again, something in my opinion unnecessary for a hobby, and I don't plan to make it. I don't have to get anywhere on the plane. I don't plan to make it a commercial thing for me. So no, not necessarily. And usually, if you just fly around, say Mount Rainier, or you get out of Renton and fly next to the Space Needle and back to Renton, there is no necessity to file anything. You're always in vicinity of a tower or something like that. So there is always a fallback plan if something goes weird.
All right. And do you still do rock climbing?
Yes, probably rock climbing was my favorite sport of all. The best combination of fitness and excitement, best combination of muscle work and mind work. And I completely forgo it after COVID. For a long time, you couldn't do it at all. And then for some time you can only do it in the mask. And when you do something as intense as rock climbing in a mask, it's very tough. And then I just couldn't find a really strong coach with whom I could stick for a long time. All the coaches that are readily available here, they were the ones to ask me, "Oh, you did this and that. Why?" I'm like, "Because of like this is easier way to climb." They're like, "Oh, cool. I'm gonna use it next time." I'm like, "Okay, who's the coach here?"
Yeah, like you're the coach. What's going on here? Yeah,
pretty much. And then a few coaches that really impressed me, they're like, "Yeah, we kind of work here one day a month when we want to, but we are not available. You cannot book us like every Tuesday you go there." And for rock climbing to be efficient, you want to do it at least twice a week. Better yet, if you can do 3 times a week. And when you don't have a good coach, I tend to get, I don't want to say lazy. I tend to kind of feel that I worked out enough today. Mm-hmm. And my coach the one that actually trained me back in the days, he was the one to be like, "Okay, Arkady, okay, let's do 2 more laps and then you can go home." And that's how you actually build up the muscle. Like, Jackie Chan said, I push up until it hurts and then 5 times more.
Yeah.
That's the idea there. So
Yeah.
this five,
They don't count till you've done like 20 or 30 already.
yeah, this 5 times more is something that doesn't happen without a coach. When I do rock climbing, I tend to find 355 reasons why I'm okay for now. I'm just gonna
Yes.
push it next time.
Yes, of course. So it's like with rock climbing, it's like a lot of muscle memory, right? Doing the same thing over and over again.
In general, yes. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's majority of what you do is squats, because you only use hands to kind of hold off to the wall. You don't pull yourself up. If you do that, then you're doing something wrong. So majority of what you do is you pull your legs up and you do the squat. Pull your legs up and do the
Okay.
squat. That's the idea. You can get a lot of fun by finding new routes, some kind of overhanging route, something that goes around the corner. There are ways to make this entertaining. And sometimes it is indeed more of a mind exercise than muscle exercise. Sometimes it is exclusively about overcoming your fear. This easy example is you need to make a dynamic movement. We kind of need to jump from one point to the next one. And where are you going to hold off? It's a big handhold. Like you can easily hold on to that, but you have at some point you have to let everything go, like all your hands, all your feet. And this feels dangerous. You kind of jump, especially if it's like in the middle of the wall, say 12 feet high, and then you have to jump from one point to another. You look,
Like I've never jumped this far in my life before. What makes you think I can do it now? But
pretty
then you
much.
do it, and you do it.
And then you do it, and you're like, oh, it was possible, and it builds confidence. It's a good one.
So you have any like a bucket list rock climbing places you want to go to?
No,
No.
no. I only ever climbed in the gym. Never climbed
Okay.
outside.
Never wanted to do it outside?
Never wanted to do
No.
it outside. To me, it's more of a fit. Like I hate how boring fitness is. Like
Yeah.
I cannot go to the gym. Like
Yeah.
I want to shoot myself in the head when I do that. So to me, it was always an entertaining way to gain muscle mass and to be in shape in general.
Okay. So moving on next, can you talk about transforming organizations, right? Like how does that happen? Like how do you even convince organizations they need to be transformed?
Um, I never had to convince anyone to be transformed. I was always approached by people to be transformed. Um, and it's usually shareholders who see that the top management is not performing according to the expectations that usually the top management lays out for themselves. So people would say, okay, we're going to reach specific revenue targets, and they don't reach it once, twice, 3 times. That's when shareholders start to think about maybe we need a new CEO. And the first time I was invited by an HR, by headhunters, basically, who introduced me to the shareholders. I did the restructuring, and then the same shareholders asked me to do it again. And so those are the 2 times I did the actual hardcore restructuring when you go in, clean the house, and build it.
And you have to convince them to go with your plan, or you just are just
Not necessarily convince them, but more so you go in, you do the initial assessment of the company, of the industry it operates in, of the team that runs the company. And then you suggest, usually it would be an action plan of what you would like to change, how would you like to update it. And that's when you have the discussion with the shareholders, and they either approve the plan or they have some edits to the plan. Usually they approve your strategy. Very rarely they would try to add something serious there, maybe a minor edit or something like this. And then you go, you have a defined kind of guidelines. Within these guidelines, you draft up a strategy, then you go and approve this final strategy, and then you just go and execute the strategy. So that's how the process works.
And what's the process for deciding the time to make the transformation? Like how do you say this should happen in 6 months, 2 months, a year? How do you decide that?
I don't think there is a cookie cutter answer to this question. Usually it's more so, what are the targets the shareholders want to achieve with this specific company, and what do they need in what time? So if shareholders are happy to wait for the next 5 years, it can be a gradual transformation. If they need the results in 12 months, then you need to be very rapid with these things. So it depends on what their expectations are.
Okay. So next, can you talk about the importance of companies making data driven decisions and the importance of companies being data centric, so to speak?
Sure. this is such a hyped term these days, like data centric, data driven. Everybody is data driven to somewhat degree. Um, and it can stem from everything. Like an easy example would be the conversions on your website or conversions on your social media. How many people like your content? What's the percentage? How can you improve that percentage? That's very simple and I would say simplistic application of data-driven decision making. That's obvious to everybody. A little bit more complex thing would be to monitor the happiness of your employees. You would be surprised how small of a percentage of companies actually do monitor the satisfaction of their employees in a real way, not just some fake metrics for the street, but in the real way. This can drive a lot of decisions in terms of how you retain your talent, how you acquire new talent, how do you make sure that people do not sit in the same place and do not get stagnated, they don't feel that the life kind of passes them by. This could be a little bit more complex and requires a little bit more monitoring, surveys, and things like that. And it can go all the way down to actually serious data-driven models when you're talking about some specific meta metrics. So you don't look at metrics, but you look at the dynamics of a group of metrics and how they correspond to each other. These are very rare. I've seen this maybe once in my life, but usually these teams really know what they do.
So change subjects. You came to the United States from Russia a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
How many years have you been here?
Since February 2020.
So when you moved to America, what's like something that like shocked you about America? Like you weren't expecting, like something like a culture shock. Like you knew we did in America, like, okay, I see it now. It's like totally like kind of blew your mind, so to speak, that you weren't expecting.
Police more than anything else. Like we had this very funny moment when we first had to buy some pills in the pharmacy and they gave us these yellow bottles and you only see it in the movies before, because in Russia you just buy pills in a blister. Like, yeah, well, you would buy Claritin or I don't know, Allegra, some just a carton package. And they gave you this kind of orange thing. This was fun. But the real culture shock was police, because, and I told this to Vlada maybe like a year ago or so, we heard the sirens. And I was like, look, whenever you live in Russia and you hear the sirens, you're like, oh shit, something's going down. When you're in the US and you hear sirens, you're like, oh, something's going to be figured out now. The history of Russian police has been for a very long time more so an oppressive system than the protection system, especially through Soviet Union period. It got better in modern Russia, but in Soviet Union, police was something that is mainly protecting the state from the people who live in that state. In the US, it's very different. I know all the problems that exist with the American police, sure, but I'm telling you, in the US, the main thing for police is to protect you first and foremost, and then figure out everything else. I mean, and it goes from very tiny things like we've been in a car accident, and the first thing the policeman said when he came was, could you please step to the side of the road so nobody hits you? The first thing the Russian policeman would say, like, oh, what a dumb idiot. How could you crash your car like that? Are you blind or something? It would be immediately jumping to judging.
Yeah, that's crazy. So why Seattle? Of all the cities in the United States, why the Seattle area?
Vlada selected a town, a city. The agreement was I would select a country and she selects a city. So I think she would be better positioned to answer that. In general, we like the total atmosphere of the town, the vibe of Seattle. It's extremely productive and it's not aggressive at the same time. This is weird compared to like if you go Moscow, London, New York. They're all productive, but they're also very aggressive. Like look at how people drive in New York, for example.
Or how they walk across the street, for that matter.
Sure, but
or how they walk by you, for that matter.
Exactly. That reminds me a lot of Moscow, but Seattle is not like that.
Yeah. So I posted some things from some posts you did on LinkedIn recently. So you did a post on something called graphene. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, sure.
Like seeing like I see like this post like this super mineral coming up. What is graphene? And
it's basically carbon that is done in a flat atomic 2D layer, two-dimensional layer. So you talk about diamond or graphite pencil, it's all carbon. It's basically all carbon, just a different pressure. So the beauty of graphene is that it's a two-dimensional material made out of carbon. So instead of a three-dimensional,
so it's like a natural made.
No, it's not natural made whatsoever. The invention of the invention of graphene was very funny. The researchers, they actually got the Nobel Prize for that, if I recall correctly. The researchers had a layer of graphite, and they had a, what's the word? Not the masking tape.
Duct tape.
They had a duct tape on it, and they peeled it off, and they saw a thin layer of material on it, and they started researching that. That's how they came onto this. So the beauty is that it's not natural at all. It's like as artificial as it gets. And the beauty is that this two-dimensional material has superior properties. It's much harder than steel. It's much lighter. So in theory, if you can build a tube made out of a single atom layer of graphene, it's called nanotubes, and you can build extremely strong structures. It's all fine and dandy until you realize that these tubes are maybe like an inch long, is the longest by far that has ever been built. So it's not practical yet.
It's one of those things easier said than done so far.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever get to where we actually use it as an everyday tool?
I don't know about everyday tool. I think eventually we'll get there. Whether you and I will see that or not, that's a question. I think it will be very specific military and aerospace usage first, and then maybe gradually it'll kind of disseminate in our lives and trickle down to our daily usage. I don't see a lot of, outside of specialized equipment, I don't see a lot of use cases for super light, super strong material in our daily lives. We don't need it.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure you don't know this answer to this question, but like you just said, these scientists basically got this by luck, right? How much science is actually found by luck, right? I'm sure scientists do their work, all that kind of stuff, but how often is like this, like just pure luck and like, you know?
I don't know an answer to this question.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of science discovered by luck? No idea.
Yeah.
A lot of our discoveries as a civilization in general has been something random, has been something like, you do realize that wine was not designed to be wine. Somebody just drank a spoiled grape juice and like, oh, okay, I'm not dead and I feel funky.
Man, 30 minutes later, I feel kind of good right now.
Exactly. The invention of bread was also something really weird. So they used to take grains and mix it with water and kind of dump it into the hole in the ground, and that would be some kind of a porridge that they would eat. And there were a couple of very hot days, at least this official story goes, a couple of hot days, and kind of had a crust. And they're like, ooh, what if we take this and put it on fire? Is it going to be as good as this crust that was there because of the sun? A lot of our research is random. A lot of our inventions are random. The story that I really love is Maxwell's equation. That's all electrodynamic stuff. So he created his equations in his original form, not in the way that we know it with all the divergence and everything, but he created these equations in his original form, and he was like, it's missing something. And he added an element to an equation simply from the side of mathematical beauty. And it turned out that this was the full complete equation, and it actually worked. And his prediction was just a hunch driven by mathematical aesthetics more than anything else. And now look at this, 50% of our world GDP is thanks to electromagnetic equations of Maxwell.
I don't know how often this happens, right? Like, of course, like the guy just said, he was like well-known scientist. So he took his findings and people did a peer review, and they, okay. But how many people are like, they're not like really well-known scientists or not even scientists at all, and they're messing around with different things, and they actually figure something out on spawn, but like, yeah, I'm just Jason Cavness. There's no way this is right, and just throw it away, right? I'm sure that happens more than we think.
I think it happened more than we would expect, say 100 years ago or so. Majority of the low-hanging fruits, at least in physics, the one field that I can talk in great detail about, I don't know, for example, what's the case with biology. I'm pretty sure that there are lots of revelations that could be done by people who are bystanders. Maybe I'm wrong. But for physics, that is definitely the case when I would not expect a lot of random people just barging into this field and then getting something done without prior formal education there.
So with physics, like who's like, when did physics actually begin? Like who's like the father of physics?
Newton,
Okay.
of course. Like he's the author of calculus. He's the author of all the modern physics, I would say.
So physics is that's what we're talking about, like stuff like the Big Bang Theory, dark matter, all the kind of things.
Including this as well. Your TV is physics. The ability to broadcast this interview on a global scale is all physics enabled. So your all of your devices is quantum mechanics.
So physics has to be like perfectly balanced, right? It can't be off a little bit and then everything goes to shit, correct?
Yes, like of course there are always margins, especially when you deal with real life applications. You can have margins in how these devices work, and you can have margins in how perfectly everything is aligned. Your car would have a lot of margins built into it, built for robustness. When we talk about theoretical physics, yeah, one simple mistake in calculations would completely throw you off your game, and you would not find why it doesn't work anymore.
Is there like something in physics that you think is out there hasn't just been discovered? Like, oh, do you think there's actually wormholes or potential for time travel?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, the whole physics is the history of how they've been disproved. We had this professor of atomic physics back in the days, probably one of the best professors I've ever had, definitely the best physics professor I've ever had. So the first maybe month or two, he was teaching us the history of atomic physics. And he said, so everybody found protons, neutrons, and electrons, and everybody was happy until some dumb person found quarks. And everybody's like, gosh, we just figured it out. Why do you need to make it more complicated? And then he said, okay, we have two quarks. Let's call it up and down. And everything we know is comprised out of that. A couple of years later, another guy comes up and say, hey, actually, there is another pair of quarks. And then another guy comes up and there is another pair of quarks. And like physics is constantly rewriting itself. The whole idea of scientific method, you can kind of write a cycle. You have a hypothesis, something works like that. Then you do an experiment to prove or disprove your theory. You collect the data and you update your hypothesis based on that data. You make some conclusions and you update your hypothesis, and then the cycle repeats itself again. So the whole idea is that you constantly break the laws of what is real and what is not. There is an old meme about that. You break the laws of society, you go to jail. You break the laws of religion, you go to hell. You break the law of physics, you go to Sweden and get your Nobel Prize.
That's funny. So do you think we found like the smallest thing out there? Or is it possible I can find something that's so small we can't even see it, but we can prove it's there?
There is a physical limit to how small a thing can be linearly. Planck's constant, the Planck's size. You cannot have anything smaller than that would not have any physical sense. So quarks are still much larger than that. So maybe there is something. I don't think that's really the main question. The main question right now is how to unify weak and strong nuclear, electromagnetics, and gravity together into one model. The whole unification theory that we've been struggling with, how to basically weak, strong, and electromagnetic, you can all wrap up together in so-called standard model. How do we incorporate gravity into that? That has been the biggest problem. Everything else seems to work fine unless you start dealing with gravity. I would say gravity and the nature of time are the largest theoretical physics problems of our universe in general. Of maybe not universe, sorry. Of where we are right now as a civilization.
Do you think there's other civilizations out there?
I want to believe, let me put it this way. Are we going to encounter them or not? That's a whole different question. It just seems very unlikely that we're the only ones.
Especially with, I think James Webb discovers all these galaxies every day with all these planets potentially. Is this
like what? How many billions of stars in our galaxy? Billions. And how many galaxies are there? Billions. So it's billions and billions. And at least as many planets. I would argue there are probably trillions of billions of planets, in the observable universe. and we don't actually know how larger it is than the observable universe. So it's just very, very unlikely that we're the only civilization that has emerged. Extremely unlikely. However, space is vast, and traveling through space without discovering wormholes or some other science fiction concepts, or maybe uploading your consciousness and sending your consciousness as a data packet, is very difficult. And even if you can figure out the as fast as light travel, you're still dealing with the problem that the space is extremely huge. Like the closest star to our star system is 4 light years. So even if you travel at the speed of light, you have to spend 4 years traveling from point A to point B. So if superluminal travel is not possible, and everything we know about physics says it is not, and it has to deal with causality, so it goes into deeper philosophical questions rather than just physics and formulas, then the chance of seeing another civilization is extremely small, simply because how large space is.
You bring a good point. A lot of people think like they look at the night sky, if they're like in the country, see all these stars close. Like space is actually much of darkness and blackness. They ain't like the stars like right next to each other, right? They're like far, far apart, right?
Stars are very far from each other, yes, light years from each other. And it seems all nice from our corner of the galaxy, but I think when you're in space and when you're between star systems, it could be very devastating for your psyche.
So Elon Musk comes to you and says, hey, I want you to be in the first flight to Mars. You saying yes or no? Knowing it's you could probably go at least 2 years, time away from family, all the dangers and all that kind of stuff.
I'll probably say yes, simply because I like new challenges and adventures. I know for sure my wife would be okay with that. My concerns would be more so what happens right now with my own business and with all the things that I do. What happens while I'm away for the next 2 years? Can I put it on hold? Can I pause it? So if it happens if it happens today, it would be challenging. If it happens in half a year from now, it would be much easier. If it happens in 2 years from now, I'm like, okay, sign me up. I'm leaving tomorrow. So it has more to deal. By the way, yeah, nobody's going to let me go to Mars tomorrow. They need proper physical conditioning and all of that stuff. So you need to be extremely fit physically and mentally to go on any deep space mission, let alone Mars. You need to be compatible with your peers.
That's the most important one right there. You're gonna be these random people 2 years. You gotta be compatible some kind of way.
I think in every possible way, including probably sexual way, you probably have to have some people with whom you're compatible sexually, because how are you going to survive there for 2 or 3 years without human touch?
Yeah, good point. So what's a problem you think people who do physics have to be working on?
To me, the most interesting part of physics would be fusion. There are several things. Okay, if we talk about, and I will lay them up at the scale of plausibility. I would say fusion is something that is plausible, not feasible. It's possible to be done. Maybe it's not ongoing joke about fusion. It's always 20 years away. It was 20 years away in the 60s, and it's still 20 years away from now. Maybe it's 15 years away. There is still a lot of issues with figuring it out properly. Then the next very, very interesting thing, and I would say that fusion is the holy grail of physics, because once you figure out fusion, you have almost zero cost, limitless energy that is as green as it gets, that has no downsides such as nuclear fission has. And it is going to change how we live as society, because if you have access to limitless energy, you actually have access to limitless production. You start moving to the post-material civilization, where it doesn't really matter anymore who has a Ferrari and who has a Golf. I don't know, whatever. 1997 Honda Civic. I love Honda Civic, by the way. I used to ride it for many years. So fusion. The next thing that is dear to my heart would be nano assembly. So if we can figure out how to disassemble anything into raw protons, neutrons, and electrons, and assemble it back into anything else, which is again theoretically possible, just requires an enormous amount of energy. That's why fusion is is really important. Then you will essentially have a machine where you can throw a glass into it, or you can throw a bottle of water and get a diamond or a burger or a shoe, whatever you want, as long as the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons are enough. You can throw in a piece of dirt and get out a bullet. Like, it doesn't, you can build anything you want, basically. So if those two things happen, we are going to essentially become post-material society, which is going to redefine how we live, what are the whole value system of our society will be changed. The capitalism will no longer exist, and we'll have to figure out a way to live in a new world where people are not starving, so on and so forth. Sorry, the last one here would be warp engines and the ability to fold space-time. It has been proven theoretically possible, and even without the necessity to have unlimited energy, but it's still very, very far from practical applications.
Yeah, that's some nice stuff. So science fiction, any like favorite science fiction books or TV shows or movies?
100% Neuromancer by Gibson,
Okay.
number one. The only book I believe who won Hugo, Nebula, and Philip Dick awards, all three major science fiction awards. The only book in history that actually did it, and one of the best books by Gibson in my own opinion. This is definitely my favorite book. I think it's a fantastic piece of literature. I think it's going to be classics, and I mean classics, like Shakespeare. It's the way he wrote it, the way the language, everything is fantastic. The story, all of these things. And he wrote it back in the 80s and predicted the modern world pretty much exactly. And of course, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's scary how back in the day, I think 60s Star Trek pretty much predicted us now, like the flip phone, the TV screens, the microwaves, like, yeah. So I wonder what's on TV now that's going to come true like 20, 30 years,
A lot of stuff that they predicted never happened. We don't have flying cars.
Yeah.
We don't have artificial limbs that are like properly integrated in our life. Sure, they work, but like you cannot feel, you cannot touch as well as you could with your actual arm, for example. Lots of things haven't materialized yet, but they will at some point.
So what got you interested in the field of physics? What drew you to that?
When I was 17, to me, physics was always about understanding the world around us better than we know already. It was an ability to add a new lens to your perception of the world. For example, do you realize that everything around us and you yourself and me myself are just emptiness rearranged? 99% of all the space within a given atom is emptiness. So the tiny proton and a tiny electron flying very far from it, and it's 99% between it's empty. So this table is emptiness, this glass is emptiness, your manifestation of emptiness, and so on and so forth. Isn't it fascinating to understand that the world is empty at its core, and like all the Buddhists were right from day one?
That's insane, for sure. Wow. And then I'm sure you probably get the philosophy people in there too, discussing all the philosophy aspects about it.
Yes. I used to run a philosophy club.
Who knew physics and philosophy were together? I would never guess that.
Same stuff. There is this ongoing joke that biology is just applied chemistry, chemistry is just applied physics, physics is just applied math, math is just applied philosophy, and philosophy is just a byproduct of misunderstanding.
That makes a lot of sense. So what makes someone, what do you call someone who studies physics? Like, that's a physics person, or like, is there a term for it?
Physicist?
Physicist. Okay, physicist. What makes someone a good physicist?
That's a loaded question. I hope I'm not going to make any enemies answering that. There should be no bias in whatever research you do. And whenever you start your research, you should not be going there trying to prove you're right. Lots of people do that. Lots of people get burned by that. Lots of really smart people are bad scientists because they don't follow the main principle of not being biased. Also, very famous scientists are like that as well. So that's number one. You should not be biased. You should be proving or disproving a theory your own as well as you would do with this, with the next guy. You should have an intuition in terms of where to take your research. And there are people who would be looking at a whiteboard for days and not see any path forward, not a solution, just a path forward. And there would be people who would intuitively see it in like a minute. Like, oh, okay, what if we do this thing to mathematics? What if we change this formula to something else? And what if we take an integral over this space and just move on? And they find the path forward. So you should be unbiased. You should have intuition. Obviously, you should be trained. You should be well trained in your field. But I've seen lots of people who are well trained, me included. I'm never going to be a great scientist myself.
In order to be a physicist, it's just a matter of getting a bachelor's degree, master's, PhD. Like, what makes someone? How can someone say I'm a physicist? Have a certain level of education.
Masters in science, I think, is enough.
Okay.
But then again, like I've got masters in physics. Am I a scientist? No. No. Can I say that I can be a strong scientist? Like honestly, honest to God, no, I don't think so. For instance, I honestly think that I lack that scientific intuition. I have life intuition, business intuition. From everything I understand about the works about how intuition works, is your experience that's digested by your subconscious mechanisms, and then you get answers like out of nowhere. Actually, it just emerges from your subconscious. I don't think I have that level of intuition when it comes to physics. I do when it comes to business. I do when it comes to relationship. I do not when it comes to physics.
So I knew he's the father of physics, correct?
Who? Newton. Yeah.
And he lived back in the 1500, 1600?
1600.
If he came back to life today, would he say, hey, people who do physics, y'all made like great strides, or would we be like, I can't believe you haven't figured this one thing out yet?
I think he would be amazed with what we have achieved. Absolutely. Like he would be mesmerized by the amount of what has been achieved. Honestly, I think we don't even need to go that far. Even if we take Einstein and put him in a modern electric vehicle, Einstein died relatively not so long ago. He wouldn't be, for example, mesmerized by a plane. But if you put Newton into a commercial airliner or private jet, it would blow his mind. Or if you give him an iPhone.
Be overwhelming, huh?
If you give iPhone to Einstein, I'm pretty sure he'd be like, what's that? And like you can access Wikipedia, you can access any bit of human knowledge just on your palm. That would be something, in my opinion, absolutely mind-boggling for him.
Let's suppose there's like a early physicist out there, like maybe they're in college or studying. What advice you have them for like either like become a better physicist or doing this as a career?
Honestly, not in a place to give advice to become a better physicist, because I am not, although I've got masters in science. So what I would give to an advice that I would give to anyone who goes into college is follow your passion, follow your heart, and they will lead you to the right place. They will lead you to the biggest potential of your self-actualization in general, whether you study physics, ancient history, or AI. Just follow what you feel is right. This will make you a uniquely positioned person.
So around the world is like is the process for science the same? Like a peer review article in the United States has the same method of doing a peer review article, like we'll say Saudi Arabia, is all the science stuff the same, all the methods the same, the standards the same, are they different?
Principles would be the same. The idea would be the same. You submit a paper, other people from the field review it and provide their comments on that. It will be different in terms of like what exactly is done by every single person. Not within the same lab in the US, it will be different peer reviews. But the process, the general vision is the same.
Does a certain country or a certain part of the world produce more scientists, or they pretty much
US
pushes more? Why do you think that is? Just do we put more money into science or something like that, or?
I think US recognizes the importance of technology and has always recognized the importance of technology and after World War II, only doubled down on that as the core civilizational engine. There is a guy called Václav Smil guy, old distinguished professor called Václav Smil. He says, and I fully agree with him, that our civilizations are defined by the technologies that we use more than anything else. The steam engine, then the internal combustion engine. Now we live in electricity, now internet. Now we are going to live in the world of where AI is more and more present. By the way, I don't think we need a sentient AI for AI to have a huge impact on our world. Like we don't need thinking machines and self-sentient machines that feel as a person for AI to completely change the way we live our lives. There is a lot to be afraid of as is. There is a lot of to be hopeful for as is. We don't need a Skynet or a Matrix architect.
Well, at least you know who to blame for if Skynet comes.
Well, be nice to your Curry coffee machine. Maybe she will put a word for you.
I know, right? Yeah, everything's connected. So let's talk about human challenges for a minute. Like, from my point of view, like the tech has got a lot better. Like, of course, we start, to me, fire's tech, the wheel, then, airplanes, all the tech now. But has human intelligence actually got better since beginning of time, or are we still based the same level of smartness, just be able to build better stuff?
Okay, so here's my take on that. This is probably going to be more contrarian than some other things. First and foremost, I think that human experience is all about your perception of the reality. Somebody in your position would feel miserable. Somebody in your position would feel absolutely happy. And you feel as you just live your life, and it's not an extreme happiness. It's not extreme misery in any way. Somebody who would be put in a mansion of a Hollywood star would feel absolutely happy, and the same Hollywood star could commit suicide in the same mansion 2 days after. The whole thing about, like, is humanity experience better than it was before? Human experience is by definition subjective, and it's by definition the byproduct of external circumstances of your perception of that. So I don't think anything, technology, religion, philosophy, ideology, anything can really profoundly change the human experience from the viewpoint of that we always as humans want more. We always are seeking something else. We're always craving for something. On all the 7 deadly sins or whatever philosophical religious school you choose to select, will say the same thing. So subjectively, I think it's the same. Whether we lived in a cave, in a castle, or now we live in a high rise, subjectively we will always be unhappy that Mary didn't look at me this way that I wanted her to look at me. Or maybe Joe said something to my boss about me that now puts me in a bad light. We'll always find things to be unhappy about. Objectively, we just see the life expectancy, child mortality rate, and the amount of disease we can conquer. AIDS is not a deadly disease. It was in the 80s, 40 years ago. It was a death sentence.
Deadly disease.
It was the deadly disease.
Yeah.
Now it's cancer, and even cancer is going away with targeted therapy, with gene remanufacturing, with targeted proteins and T cells. Cancer will be Cancer is already not a deadly sentence. Many forms of cancer is not a death sentence anymore. Look at breast cancer. There is still like glioblastoma, like brain cancer, that's very aggressive. There are still things that are deadly and unfortunate. And there are still things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but man, people used not to live to this age. Now they do. Life expectancy grows, child mortality goes down. The amount of people killed in violent, up until a couple of years ago, in violent conflicts go down. I believe humanity has more obese people than it has starving people these days. So objectively, we are better off as species in terms of, like, if we look at humans as pets, are we fat? Do we sleep well? Blah, blah, blah. We are better off. Medicine is better. Food is better. Everything is definitely better. The world is interconnected. I can fly anywhere on this globe and I'll be there like 20 hours tops if we choose some obscure destination. This is insane. 200 years ago, that would be unimaginable.
No. There's nothing 20 hours from here. This is my world right here. This is a little village.
Exactly. So objectively, I think we're so much better off. Subjectively, people will always find something to suffer about. This hue of pink is not pink enough. This gold doesn't shine as it used to shine.
My iPhone is not fast enough. Or
Exactly.
one time I was on a plane traveling somewhere, and this guy, I mean, he had a shit fit because the internet didn't work. And the waitress was, not the waitress, the stewardess said, "Sir, can you wait a second? It has to go to space and come back, Of course, he felt really dumb then, right?
I mean, like slow Wi-Fi on the airplane is being like, I think it's the poster child of first world problems.
Yeah.
And then there are people who would moan about that.
Yeah.
There are people who would be unhappy about slow Wi-Fi on the plane. I'm like, get out of here. Like 5 years ago, it was impossible.
Yeah. It's crazy what people do or don't do.
And we are adaptive species, right? We will take everything that's good for granted very fast, and we will be unhappy if something doesn't go our way very fast. Yes, absolutely. That's always going to be the case. In post-material society, when you can get yourself 100,000 square feet house on the Malibu beach, built in 2 days by nano assemblers, you will be bored because this marble just doesn't feel like it used to feel,
Exactly right.
I walk on it in the morning and it's just not warm enough or not cold enough. People will always find something to mourn about.
Yeah, it's insane. Like the different, like you say, compares like, like a poor person in the United States is a different level of poor from someone like in, I would say, Ethiopia or, another country,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. And there are people in Bangladesh who live in slums as they lived in the 80s. For them, nothing changed.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people, being in the army, you get, see a lot of people in the world, how they really live. Like, we've seen people like, Afghanistan sleep on dirt floors. And like, that's like luxury for them to have a roof over their head is luxury, right? They don't care about the dirt floor. Because they have something over their head,
Oh, you don't get wet during the rain and the night. Animals will not bite a piece of your food when you're asleep. That's luxury for them. And I think people in general do not have appreciation for how well off majority of us are compared to what was here 200 years ago. Like, I mean, when was the hygiene by a surgeon invented? I mean, I believe it's between First and Second World War.
Yeah, wasn't
so like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Before that, they would just okay.
Let me sew on this Jason. Let me sew on Tom. Same knife, same everything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Same dirty arms, and like nobody cared about that. I honestly think we're so much better off thanks to technology, thanks to scientific method. This whole way of thinking is.
I mean, think about, electricity is not that long ago, indoor plumbing is not that long ago,
Not that long ago, yeah.
But you're talking about bringing like Einstein or Newton here. Imagine bringing someone from 1842 to today.
Yeah.
Like what? I don't have to take a piss outside. Like,
I mean, they would be flabbergasted.
What's this thing? Wash your hands. What you wash your hands for?
Exactly. They will be completely amazed by how we live this life, and that would live like magic. Honestly, if we are serious about that, the kings back in say 12th century, their ration, the diversity of food options that they would have would not be similar to a low-paying wage job in the US
Go
today.
to any grocery store, you got 10 different flavors of orange juice.
You want mangoes? Here you go. You want some dragon fruit? Here you go. If you bring this to a king, that would be like a dish, he would cherish it and share it with his queen or something. They had a very small set of options. Mm-hmm. We are all living, the standard of life is so much higher than it was 200 years ago, let alone 500 years ago.
So how tech, I can't think of the term, but like tech has always been like, 2 times 2, 4 times 4, like always doubles and doubles. Mm-hmm. Do you think tech will continue like double like this? I can't think of the term for what it is, but like
Moore's law?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I think that's going to continue to go on. Or is there eventually into that too?
Moore's law itself is probably going to reach the physical limit when we talk about electronics. However, there are photonics on the raise right now. Photonics my bet they would replace all the electronics. It's the same idea, but instead of moving electrons across all of your devices, you move photons, which don't have a mass and thus much more easily movable. They don't really heat up. There is no friction. They have lots of positive traits to that. So in a certain regards, Moore's law would continue, maybe just not in the shape of traditional electronic chips, but through the new tech.
Through the generations, has science always been basically done the same way? And if it has been in the same way, shouldn't there be a better way done? Isn't it time to find a better way to do science if it's been done the same way over and over again?
General principle would be the same: hypothesis, experiment, data, updated hypothesis, experiment, data. General principle would be the same. The quality of tools that we use has definitely improved. The quality of, and then you get a better, you utilize science to create some kind of technology to create a better tool to better understand science. So um, it's a virtuous cycle.
So a good example would be the Hubble telescope.
Yes.
To the James Webb telescope.
Yes.
Okay.
Good example would be a microscope towards electronic microscope today. Yes. Yes. You can actually go, not so long ago, they actually were able to do an X-ray of a single atom. That was unthinkable 40 years ago. So the methods, the tools are getting better every day. The core idea, the core philosophy has not changed, and I don't think it should change. It's a great way of looking at the world in general. Like, if you're rigorous about that, you can make any part of your life better. If you apply it to, say, your sleep schedule, and say, if I go to sleep at 9 p.m. every day, wake up at 5, am I going to feel better? Let's run an experiment and do that for a month. And then let's run an experiment, go to sleep at 10 and wake up at 6. What if I go to sleep at 10 and wake up at 5? So just do it for a couple of months and you'll figure out the best schedule for you. Just be rigorous about it and honest.
And of course, you got to do, you can't be like one night 9 p.m., next night 10 p.m. You got to be like,
you need to be rigorous. You need to run
yeah.
an experiment. Otherwise, you can throw it away.
So back to aliens real fast. This is my personal opinion. Like, I do think aliens out there, but a lot of people say, oh, I can't wait for aliens to come. Like, do we want aliens to come here? Like, do we want that? Like, if they can come all across the universe and come here, like, or they have good intentions, no bad intentions, right? Like, do we want to take that risk, right? My only like fear with that,
There are all the different theories on how to look at that. There was this book by one of the best, if not the best, Chinese science fiction called Three Body Problems. He advocates that any civilization, when they meet another civilization, would like to wipe it out immediately, simply because of potential explosive growth of technology, and inability to build trust between civilizations because of large distances. There is an inherent flaw in the book, so I would like not to discuss this book. People praise it, and I think it's a good written story, but the core concept, he breaks his own core premises, and then the whole book to me reads like a, I don't know, 5-year-old wrote a fiction book, like a draw a car. It's pointless because the core principles are broken. Unlike Neuromancer, for example. There are other people who say that no civilization can go past their own small habitat without actually outgrowing all these adolescent problems of killing each other, and any civilization that we will meet that's outside of their scope of existence is actually by default good, is actually by default has good intentions. I do not think that it is the proper way to look at these things, because if this civilization is, if, for example, we are ants to them in terms of like ants to you, it's an ant. At the end of the day, you see everything, the life of this ant is this and that, and his role is defined, and you know exactly what it's going to do. It's all predictable to you, and it's tiny, and it, like, there are billions of them. Do you really care? If we're ants to them, would there even be a dialogue? Would you go and talk to an ant?
Probably not. Yeah, I thought about that too. Like, like the different levels, like the ants, the birds, the bees, and then us, and then something above us. I always thought about that too.
Why do we assume that we're pinnacle of intelligence or pinnacle of creation? There is a book called, tiny book called, I believe, Fake Blindness or something like that. So it talks about a human mission meeting neurons not neurons. They're basically animals who are, I believe, like 10 feet in diameter. I don't remember their actual thing, but like imagine 10 feet in diameter, that's all brain. And it has so many neurons, it can peek into your brain. And the idea is, you know that your eye is constantly moving. It's called saccades, I believe, saccades. Let me double check. So your eyes is actually constantly moving. And yeah, it's a saccade. It's a quick simultaneous movement of both eyes. And you or I don't perceive it, but our eyes are constantly moving and taking a snapshot of what's going on, and everything else is painted by your brain. You do not necessarily see this bottle, but it is, you know, it is there. So you have a feeling it is there. Your brain paints the picture, but your eye might be looking in this corner. So these 10 feet brains, they would be moving within saccades of a person, so they would never be visible. So you had never had a chance to even see that thing. It might be in this room, we will never know. It constantly moves and it hides from our saccades, moves between your movements of your eyes. That could be a possibility. Maybe the aliens are already here. Maybe they are already talking to some of our leaders. I just hope it's Dalai Lama, not some crooked politician.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you ever listen to Lex Fridman's podcast?
I don't know.
So I listened to an episode one time talking about aliens and stuff, and Lex had a good point. He said, like, we're assuming they're going to come like in a human form, right?
Why?
Yeah, he said, what if they're like a water-based society and they come talk to the whales or dolphins, or maybe like this, maybe just like this, like, you know, like this cloud of consciousness, right? Like we have no clue what they're going to be like, right? We just make assumptions based on movies and what we think they're going to be, you know, but we have no idea.
What if it's not material at all?
Yeah.
What if it's pure energy and we will never know if they're in the same room, sitting there having a laugh at our expense?
No, right? Yeah.
I hope they do. Then they're having fun.
I mean, they could be doing observing us right now, do experiments, you know, like I mean, who knows?
Yeah. So, I think there are all these steps and stages of our mind. And I, for one, don't think that human being is the smartest one in the universe. I'm absolutely sure there are beings that are larger than us, not in a physical sense, that are smarter than us, that know it better than we do. All the mystical experiences of people of different religions and different faiths, they've all seen very similar pictures when they get mystery revelation. If you meditate deeply, you will see Buddha. And if you look at what Mandelbrot's fractal looked like, you will see Buddha as well. It's there are shapes, there are specific things. Some people, it's called the school of thought is called reductionist school of thought. They say that all of your consciousness comes from the interactions of neurons in your brain, and your consciousness is essentially a hallucination of your brain, and you tell yourself stories about what I am, who I am. Jason is this, Jason and that, and actually you're just a biological machine that's hallucinating. That's one school of thought. Contrarian school of thought would be that, you know, there was great consciousness and it created earth and sun in such a way that human life can be born, and it like everything is by design, by a super deity, and it wanted to have landing pad for its own consciousness into humans, and that's how it lives itself, how it experiences itself. And you can get versions anywhere on this spectrum, from complete hallucination to divine movement of soul. You can get anyone and of any flavor and source to talk about what consciousness is and is not.
And then you throw the multiverse on top of that.
You what?
And then you throw the multiverse on top of that.
Yeah, and things become completely convoluted. Yes. Rick and Morty is fantastic.
Oh yeah. So I got this Rick and Morty tattoo right here.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, is this that episode when they're like, yeah, like half an hour adventure?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
One of the best ones.
So are there any scientists out there right now that are alive that you admire or look up to?
Mike Levin, for sure. Mike Levin is the person who, in my opinion, redefining biology and our understanding of biological systems. He has a fantastic YouTube video on tardigrades. It blew my mind. It blew my mind to such an extent that on some Saturday morning, I asked my wife to sit down and watch 25-minute video about science on YouTube on like Saturday morning. She's like, "Can I get a coffee at least?" I'm like, "Sure, but this is the first thing we're doing today." What he essentially did, he said that genetics, while it's important, is not the only thing that defines how we evolve and how our body grows. And he did an experiment. He cut tardigrades in half. What usually happens if you cut tardigrade in half, then the head grows a tail and the tail grows a head, and now you have two tardigrades. That's normal. There is nothing unexpected, just awesome regeneration skills. What he did, he cut tardigrades in half and applied specific type of electromagnetic field. He was able to grow a tail from a tail, so a tardigrade without a head. He was able to grow a head from a head, so a tardigrade without a tail. And he says that electromagnetic fields really, I'm oversimplifying, and anyone who is watching that, I advise them to go and watch the original content by Mike Levin. He has a TEDx video on YouTube. But he essentially says that electromagnetic fields can be the guidelines of how we're going to grow any biological system, which kind of disproves the whole theory behind genetics to a great extent. Mike Levin is fantastic, yes.
That's amazing. So next, let's move on to your deep tech VC fund. It's
Sure.
called RPV.
Mhm.
So why the name RPV? Does that stand for anything, or just random letters, or?
Not anymore. It used to stand for something, but then we found so many different ways to translate it, and we like all of them. So
Okay.
for me, I like research product value.
Okay.
To me, that's kind of the whole way of science, from a theory and a mind of a brilliant scientist, all the way to a discarded package when the user used the product and done with that and got the value out of it. So, and we can talk about the whole idea of how I feel about science later, but answering to your question, I like research product value. My co-founder likes radius, impulse, and degree of freedom, because in our logo, the V is also a nu. It's a Greek letter, nu, which stands for degree of freedom. And all you need to describe a physical system is radius, impulse, and freedom. That's degree of freedom. That's all you need to actually say where a specific mechanical system, how it's going to behave from now on into future as well.
And you're the founder of the organization?
Yes.
Okay. So there's something called International Scientific Advisory Board. What is that? How do they help you?
Those are the people that are focused on their specific scientific areas. And those are the people who help us with understanding if the science behind a specific startup is solid. So usually we only do things within physics, but within our advisory board, we have experts on photonics, on energy, on neuroscience, on all the different areas of how physics could be applied to make our lives better.
So can a company be like, we'll say a radio company, right? Making like, we'll say they're making like glass bottles or something, right?
Mhm.
Using a B2B SaaS model. I'm making stuff up, like
Sure.
what's the app, whatever. Can they say, man, like, I want to become a deep tech company? Can they then become a deep company? Of course, they can't say it, I'm deep tech, but is there a way to go from a non-deep tech to a deep tech company?
I don't think so. I think
Either you are or you aren't.
you are or you aren't. Deep tech by definition means that you're doing something in science. I would go with the strict measure and say something in science, not science or engineering, because that's a little too vague for me. You are doing something in the scientific realm that is a breakthrough of science itself, and you're building a breakthrough product on top of that. So if you're some SaaS fintech organization, there is no reason for you to go and try building a deep tech expertise. I would argue it's easier to build a logistic chain or warehouse, some existing physical object. Deep tech requires a lot of R&D, a lot of scientific prowess.
And you invest like the early stage, correct?
Pre-seed exclusively.
Pre-seed. So with deep tech needing to be so advanced, how do you figure out who to invest in a pre-seed? I'm guessing that's the idea of napkin almost. They really haven't proven anything at pre-seed, have they? Or
Not necessarily. Majority of the companies that we invest in would have some kind of prototype, at least in the lab environment, sometimes even in the real environment. So it's not a pure theory anymore. It's, I would say, TRL 3, 4, 5. Technology readiness level is a scale developed by NASA to define where the technology is in its development. So I would say they have some kind of prototype, and we can take it from that level of a prototype to an actual product, and then help them with product market fit and getting it to the market. So yeah.
So deep tech, that's different from AI, machine learning. Those are all different things, correct?
Deep tech, I don't think it's a mature term enough, and probably like IT, it would never be mature enough. But lots of people would say AI and machine learning is there. Lots of people say robotics and drones are there. I would argue that it's not deep tech enough, at least in our understanding of what deep tech is.
And how many people are on your team at your firm?
Two people full-time, 2 general partners, 4 venture partners, and roughly 20 advisors.
Like, how do you find your deal flow? Because I could be wrong. I guess there are not a lot of deep tech companies out there, are there? Or there's a lot of deep tech stuff out there.
There is a lot of deep tech stuff out there. There are accelerators, conferences. One of the largest is in France every year. There are lots of VCs who come to us because they know we have scientific expertise, and they would send things to us to verify and, of course, share the deal. We have partnership with CERN. We have partnership with Extreme Laser Light Infrastructure. It's one of the largest laser providers in the world. We have lots of scientists who refer things to us and who bring interesting, I would say that scientists, although they don't bring a lot, they bring the most interesting ones. That they really understand let me take a step to the side and explain why I think it's so interesting. Whenever a specific new technology emerges in the market, it usually has at least 4 or 5 competitive technologies that are trying to solve the same problem from a different angle. So when a scientist brings something to you, they usually bring the best in-class solution across all the different technologies. So at least one factor is definitely positive when it happens. So this happens. We also have our own parser that goes through SBIR and STTR database. So we look through grants, what kind of companies receive grants of a specific phase, of a specific size for a specific application. So all the traditional deal flow sources like VCs and conferences and awards and whatnot, accelerators, and some of our specific ones, such as scientific community and the parser.
So why become a VC? Why go that route a couple years ago?
The idea was when I moved to the US, the idea was to be involved in science and technology deeply. And that was why I moved to the US. You asked why Seattle, because my wife selected. Why US? Because I wanted to be close to science and tech. Whether it would be a VC firm or not, I had no idea. The more I researched the field, the more I found that there is one huge glaring problem with funding the scientific startups and deep tech startups. This is the mismatch of knowledge between entrepreneurs and investors. A lot of scientific entrepreneurs are not really great at sales, and that's okay. Nobody expects them to. A lot of investors, not only VCs, family offices, angels, a lot of investors are not able to ask all the right questions when it comes to a scientifically intensive startup. So there is this mismatch in background knowledge, which prevents a dialogue from happening. There is also, I would argue, a mismatch in values. So to scientists, all the VCs are doing some boring stuff, dealing with money. To VCs, all the scientists are sitting in ivory towers, thinking about some useless concepts. I'm of course oversimplifying and
but some would say not about much.
We're trying to change that. We're trying to make sure that VCs see the potential that scientists bring to the actual commercial world. We're trying to explain to scientists and help them appreciate how much work is actually done by people who fund the future progression of their technology.
And you invest only in the United States or anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world. So far, we have only done investments in the United States, but that's simply because the best deep tech companies are in the United States right now.
What country would be second to the United States as far as
Europe for sure.
Okay.
We have one deal pending and a couple of more that we're looking deeper into that.
So talk about raising your fund. I think a lot of founders don't realize how hard it is for VCs to raise funds, right? I mean, because
Me included.
as a founder, we have limited pool. Y'all have a really limited pool of money to go after, I would think.
I wouldn't say it's a problem of a limited pool of money. I've raised dozens of millions of dollars as a founder and a CEO of companies. And when every single friend of mine told me that raising a VC fund is 10 times harder, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I was very wrong. It is indeed 10 times harder. The problem is less so the pool of money, or actually a lot of money sources on the market. The problem is the differentiation and opaqueness of this world of money. So when you go and raise for a SaaS, fintech, and e-commerce or whatever, you would have a couple of hundreds of VCs that do exactly what you do. You go to several of them, you make sure that you do the pitch properly, you burn through some of these VCs, you get your pitch locked in a couple of months, you're going to get done. And you always have this limited time. You say, okay, in 3 months, we're going to end up our closing. Whoever missed it, you missed it, done. It's easier to differentiate, easier to call it. And if you do fintech for e-commerce, there may be another 10 companies like that, 20 companies like that. And 20 would be an extremely crowded space as is. There are 5,000 micro VCs in the US alone. So funds that are 25 million or smaller, 5,000 of them, and all of them say the same stuff. We are going to invest into fantastic startups and bring you a fantastic return.
And we're for the founders.
Exactly. I mean, to an average limited partner, the person who invests in a venture firm, LP, he hears all the same pitch, all the same stuff, all like 1,000 times a year, and it all looks the same. It's very hard to differentiate from the crowd. It's very hard to stand out. So they're looking for signals like, oh, I spent 5 years at Madrona, or I spent 10 years at Sequoia, and I did this and I did that. I did some angel investment. Angel investment does not necessarily convert into being a good VC. Is it better than nothing? Sure. Is it really substantial? No, not really. So it's very hard to differentiate for a venture fund. And the world of investment is so much more opaque. Like, there are family offices that would write $1 million checks and they don't have a website. They don't have a LinkedIn page. There is no way you will find them unless you're introduced. And even if you're introduced, they will think 15 times before taking a meeting with you. I've had situations when I would be introduced to the same family office by 3 different people, and they only reacted to the third person. Not because they didn't have respect for the first 2, it's just because they're like, okay, let's wait a little bit more. This guy is not prominent enough for even to take a meeting. And so those are the challenges. Very, very homogeneous product across all the different VCs and very unclear sources of money.
What makes y'all say yes to a company?
Wow. There is no one thing that will make us say yes. There are like 40 reasons we're going to say no, but there is not a single reason we're going to say yes to a company. Our process is detailed. We go through deal breakers. There are 12 deal breakers when we start. If any of them is an actual fact, then we're not even going to entertain the deal deeper. There are roughly 35 questions that will build the whole picture of the company later. There is not a single one thing that will make me say yes, unfortunately.
These 35 questions, does the company know these questions ahead of time? Or is this something you do with your internal process that you ask yourself internally, like these 35 questions, and the company doesn't know where they're going through?
I always paint a very clear picture to the company when we start. So they usually know what we're going to ask. They quite often they would actually just get a list of questions from us in an email after a meeting or 2, something that has not been answered before. We're not asking anything that they shouldn't already know. They should understand how they're going to defend their IP. They should understand how much money they need for the next couple of years. They should understand how they want to spend their money. They should understand for sure where they want to find themselves in a year from now, what milestones they're hitting. So we're not asking some obscure unknown,
You're not asking
mysterious
for the
questions.
theory of dark matter times 27 or something.
Exactly, exactly. We don't ask that stuff because what's the point? We have our own international advisory board that would go deep into science, but we don't bother the founders with all these questions.
Has it been in the past a company like we'll say like, failed the first test, they came back maybe a year later and they were actually ready a year later, then you invested in them?
I haven't seen that example yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Are there any companies that failed the test that you hope will come back with a better answers that you really want to invest in them, but they
Well,
weren't ready?
I think calling it a failed test is a little bit too harsh of a way to put it, because we are looking for a very specific profile of companies. I recently replied to one of the guys in neuroscience field, and I verbatim told him, you are going to make a great company and it's probably going to print money like a crazy printer. Is just you do not bring anything in terms of science to the world. There is no deep science to back. So I'm very sorry, but we're going to pass on that. But by the way, here are 3 introductions to other venture firms who don't have that as a disqualifying factor. Actually seen this scenario a couple of times before, and again, there will be other VCs who are happy to back them. There are companies that I hope will come back to us, but it's not going to happen in a year or two. There is one company called HB11. The first people to figure out the proton-boron 11 reaction for nuclear fusion. I love these guys. Warren and the whole team is fantastic. They need to figure out how to build a laser that's roughly 100 times more powerful than anything that exists today.
No big deal.
Yeah, just maybe
Yeah,
10 billion bucks or something
throw a
like
couple of kindergartens on that problem.
Exactly. Even the Nobel Prize winners don't have an answer to that question. So they will have to figure that out. And once they do, I'll be the first to back them. Probably by the moment they do, they will be a $1 billion worth company, but I'll be the first to back them.
So you're making an investment decision. It's like this has to be unanimous, or it's like a 3-2 vote, 2-1 vote. How does that work?
None of that. We have a scorecard, and each question is 1 to 5, and there's 35 questions. So every single member of the committee makes their own individual assessment, and then we just average out the opinion. We do not have a discussion about that. We do not try to push each other.
Subjective. It's all like math, so to speak. It's all like,
I would say it's all completely subjective. It's just not a single subjective opinion pushes anyone else subjective opinion towards a specific direction.
And how many people in the committee at any one time? Like 5-person, 4-person, or just depends?
It depends. And at the smallest size, it would be 4, 5, and the smallest size would be 5. Usually it's something like 6 or 7.
Okay.
One thing to be very clear about, it's always me and Tomas, and we go through the whole scorecard, and other people usually would have their opinion about specific area, like IP protection or technological strategy or general business strategy. So it's not necessarily that all 5 people would answer every question. Some people would only answer 2 or 3 out of these 35.
Okay. And so y'all have been a VC from like since 2021, I think you said?
We've started thinking about that in 2021. We started raising in January 23. So just this year.
Okay. So you're pretty a brand new firm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seemed like, a lot of deal flow, a lot of, stuff out there. How did you put yourself out there to attract all these potential deals?
Airtable.
Okay.
Airtable is probably one of the best tools I've discovered in the last 2 years. Everything we run on Airtable, whether it's our negotiations with limited partners, or it's our pipeline, or it's our media presence. So once we're done today, I'm going to go on and say, okay, production complete. Next to your podcast.
What's the best way for people to reach out to you? Like, do you like cold emails, cold calls?
Emails by far. I always respond to all the emails that I get, unless it's some really, really dumb cold email.
Something like I'm selling bananas, invest in my banana farm or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah. Like somebody who would start an email like, "Hi, no name, nothing. I've seen that your firm is very active in private equity mergers and acquisitions." I'm like, delete. Like you did 0 research.
Or like, "Hi, I see you're human. We both be there."
like do some effort. If somebody says, "Okay, like, hi Arkady, I see that you do deeply scientific stuff. Here is my biotech startup. I'm like, hey man, thank you. We don't do bio, but thanks a lot. Here's a couple of other firms. But when people are just trying to do the email blast, like, oh, we're doing this blockchain. I'm like, we don't do software deals. And then the founder, like 2 weeks later, hey, I'm the founder of this blockchain. I'm like, I'm already responded to you, my friend. Like once more, and you're gonna go into spam.
Yeah.
And I try to respond to all of the emails unless it's completely unprepared, completely cold email.
I know on the other end, like they'll tell you, like you always personalize your emails to different people, but sometimes it's hard. Like you pull someone up, you either want to sell to or like try to get invested in them, and they have nothing anywhere, no post on LinkedIn. You Google the name, there's nothing, right? So you're like, because you don't have time to be like Columbo, like really deep dive with their background, right?
Isn't it amazing though? Like, hey man, you're like a ninja. I couldn't find anything about you on the internet. I would love to learn more on how did you maintain such a low profile in our digital age. Fantastic opener.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is.
Like you can always find something interesting to say about a specific person. Well, when there is such an absence of information on the internet, is it not that this is a very interesting case?
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, it's a good point.
You can always find a way to tailor that. And then one thing that I've learned about fundraising many years ago, and then relearned it again here in VC, you really want to do your homework before you even reach out. There would be so many investors who would not be a good fit, and you will waste your time finding them, getting into their schedule, having a call with them, only to find out that they're not going to do your deal. Not because there is something wrong with you, but because they don't do blockchain.
Yeah.
Like, what's the whole point of doing that? So I would rather spend half an hour researching every single investor that I'm reaching out to, than I spend 2 hours talking to them and hoping for something. And
because most investors do a good job on the internet or somewhere what they do or don't do for the most part.
Unless we're talking about family offices.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Family offices are fantastically notorious about that. Like they don't say anything to anyone.
But you found them though, right? Some kind of way. So
I don't do cold emails. Like I just don't do cold emails for many reasons. So anyone who is on my cap table, any investor who I have has came through a call or through a warm introduction, not through a cold email. And I would meet family offices when some of our limited partners or some of our friends at VC community, they will just bring these people to me, and we'll have a conversation, like I had yesterday with one family office.
Has there been a time in the past when we were raising money and someone wanted to invest money in your fund, but you said this isn't a good match for us, what we need, and said no to the money?
Yes, not once, not twice.
Okay.
We have canceled a whole sleeve of Russian investors in February 2022, millions of dollars, more than 10 millions, almost 15. We canceled every single one. But that is geopolitical. That's nobody's fault. We've canceled people who are like, oh, I love your fund so much, I want to invest. And then I see that the person has no idea what he's talking about. And I'm like, how many venture funds have you invested in? He's like, none. I'm like, okay. How many venture funds have you seen? He's like, yours is the only one. I'm like, man, go and look at least 20, 30 other firms. By the way, here are some good candidates for you. Talk to them and make sure that you know what you're getting in. You're locking your money for 10 to 12 years. You have to trust these people. You have to be in good standing with these people. Just don't do things that are not, that you don't understand really well. I canceled a couple of LPs like that. Yeah, so there have been situations. There have been people who I just don't like personally. There was this guy early in our fundraising experience. We were not actually even raising then. We're just starting the pre-marketing. So talking to people, what would happen if we would raise this fund? If we were to create this fund. And the guy was talking to me, FTX happened. That Sam Bankman-Fried.
That guy.
And he calls me and he's like, so blockchain crashed, means deep tech is going to crash. I'm like, what do you mean blockchain? He's like, FTX crashed. I'm like, that's not blockchain. He's like, whatever, like crypto crashed. So now deep tech is going to crash. I'm like, could you walk me through a logic, please? He's like, yeah. So crypto is a new thing. Deep tech is a new thing. one new thing crashed, another new thing will crash. I'm like, so fantastic to figure out that this is your logic so early in the process. Please don't call me ever again. Like, seriously,
That's comical.
that's comical. Yeah. So some people are comical. Yeah.
Man, that's insane. So how do y'all decide how much money to raise for your fund?
That depends on the strategy that you're running. You will hear a lot people saying that your size is your strategy. So there is a specific amount of deals a team can do per year, especially if first-time managers, especially emerging team, and there is a specific amount of time you have to deploy. So, for example, if you have 3 years to deploy, and you can, at your best performance, do 10 deals a year, then that's it. That's your 30 deals. Then you say, I want to invest in, say, pre-seed stage. Pre-seed on average raises around $1 million, just for the sake of example, on their round. We want to put something like, let's say, 500K. Half of this round, we want to take the half of this round in these companies. So that gives you 15 million that you need to invest. You also need money to spend on your fund administration, your legal accounting, your management fees, blah, 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 blah. And you build up, you get to the amount, to the size of the fund that you need to follow your strategy. So it starts with the amount of the deals that you want to do, and you can realistically do. I cannot do 200 deals a year with my co-founder alone. It's going to be insane. So we target around 12 to 15 deals a year. We have 4 years deployment period. We target 50 deals total. That's how we arrived on 25.
And then, so when doing these deals, is there like a certain time frame you want to make a decision? Like someone comes today in your mind, okay, I want to make a decision in 2 months, 3 months, or it's not as linear as that?
Roughly 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, so pretty fast. I think that's pretty fast, isn't it?
We
Especially like doing deep tech stuff, I would think.
we back science and founder mostly. Science is what really takes time, 4 to 6 weeks easily to make the scientific due diligence. You really learn. You can only learn so much about the founder before you start working with them, and you learn majority of these things pretty early in the process.
And do you prefer to invest like in a safe convertible note price round, or
It doesn't really matter. Safe, okay. Usually we see safe.
Okay.
Convertible note I haven't seen in a decade or so.
Okay.
I think it has been completely cannibalized by safe.
Okay, so safes. What advice would you give a founder who's just like starting the fundraising process?
Know your investors. Be very thorough in understanding your investors. Be very clear on who you want to approach. The ideal situation is you meet with 10 people and raise from every single one of them. It's like with dating, the perfect dating scenario is you meet one girl and that's your wife. That's the perfect dating scenario. And dating is much harder than fundraising in a sense that you do not have a lot of information up front. When you fundraise, especially if you're a founder, you can go on the websites, you can look at LinkedIn, you can be very, very ready for your fundraise. Nobody follows that advice. Everybody just spams every single VC they see in their vicinity and hope for the best. I think it's a waste of time. Go after the people who really are a good fit for you.
So let's suppose someone's fundraising and a certain time span, maybe it's 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, but they've not raised what they want to raise. When should they stop, reassess what they're doing, and maybe start again later on?
Maybe that's a good idea. Yes. Maybe that's a good idea. There could be 2 major reasons. There is a whole domain of smaller reasons, but major reasons are the offering is not compelling. The idea is not good enough. The team is not good enough. Something is wrong with the offering. That could be the case. And in that case, definitely go back to the drawing board. Definitely go and rebuild your idea from scratch. The second option is that they didn't find the right investors, or their process was off, or my favorite minor problem is they don't follow up. Like, I know founders with whom I said, okay, send me these materials. And they never did. And guess what? I never reminded them. Because like, what the hell? Like, if they cannot share these materials with me, how are they going to run sales? How are they going to run recruitment? How are they going to be on top of things when they clearly are not?
You can't follow up one time. How are you going to follow up with sales and a touch point of sales like at least 10, 15, maybe 20 times?
That's insane. So mainly it's usually it is when the offering is not compelling enough and the idea is not compelling enough. Then go back to the drawing board. Often it is when you do not know the right VCs, you do not know the right investors, then go and find the right ones. And just be meticulous with your process. Don't be sloppy.
And sometimes I think just a lack of timing on your part, right? You might have the perfect company for a certain VC firm, but they just spend all their dry powder and they have no money for you.
If you are a perfect fit for this VC firm,
They'll find the money for
they'll
you.
find the money for you.
Okay.
They'll find the way to run an SPV for you. Easiest thing in the world would be like, we found this fantastic company. We're between funds. We don't have any dry powder. What do? Let's go to all of our LPs and say, this is fantastic opportunity. Let's do an SPV for them.
Okay.
They will find other investors who would invest in you. They will find ways to do it. If you're a perfect fit, everything else is just, mechanical objectives.
Okay. Are there any VC firms out there right now that you like want your company to be kind of be like? Or like,
Future Ventures is fantastic.
Okay.
Steve Jurvetson, Mariana Sayanko, a lot of respect for them. Their approach, they are marvelous. I would say they single-handedly lifted deep tech to the level where it is right now, at least in my perception. There are large firms like Lux Capital and The Engine from MIT, which are also very, very strong, and I like them a lot. There are other companies, there are other VC firms with good brand names. Future Ventures has a special place in my heart.
I think you mentioned earlier going to deep tech conferences. Are there any upcoming deep tech conferences you're going to go to?
There is the Falling Wall Scientific Conference in Europe in beginning of November. Really cool stuff if you're interested in science. And there is a company called Hello Tomorrow. They have an upcoming summit in Asia, I believe in October. And then they have their global summit in Paris in March 21st to 23rd. If you're in deep tech, go for it.
The place to be.
The place to be. And then again, going to Paris in March. Come on, it's fantastic.
Yeah, you can do that. So with everything you have going on, how do you take care of yourself?
I don't. But I think I could take better care of myself in terms of physical activity and sports, for sure. I could do more of that. I always sleep 8 hours, no matter what. And majority of the days I wake up without an alarm clock. It does mean that I go to sleep at like 9:30 p.m. every day. And I've heard a lot of jokes about me being a grumpy old person already. So basics are the basics. Get enough sleep every day. No matter what life throws at you, get enough sleep every day. You cannot work, on average, an office worker works 2.5 hours a day. That's an actual productive time. If you're a superstar performer, you can maybe work 5 to 6 hours a day. I mean, like diligent work. If you're like Elon Musk, maybe 7. If you're Howard Hughes, maybe 7.5. But that's it. Everything else is just BS, complete and utter BS that people can work 10, 12 hours a day. I mean, they can be in the meetings for 12 hours a day. They can be in conversations 12 hours a day.
They're not doing like deep thinking.
They're not doing deep work.
Yeah, deep work is not doing any deep work.
No. I mean, like, look, this is a fantastic conversation you and I have. Will I qualify it strongly as work? No, not at all. Would it help me in all of my goals? Yes. But is it like work? I don't think so. It's just a cool conversation to have with a nice person, but it's not like a work. It's not I'm doing some deep due diligence or whatever. So when people say I don't have enough time to sleep, it's usually bullcrap. It's like you don't have enough time to sleep, but you have enough time to watch Netflix, or drink a bottle of beer, or I don't know, talk for 2 hours straight about how Lucy said that about Jennifer. You have enough time to sleep. So basics are the basics. Get enough sleep every day. Eat well. Don't eat bad shit. And by bad shit, I mean don't eat added sugars. Try to minimize that in your life. Like if you want to eat sugars, go eat blackberry. It's a blackberry season. You go to Kirkland or Bellevue, it's free. You're not going to spend anything. Just walk on the street and collect, I don't know, 2 buckets of blackberries. Eat fruits instead of sweets. Instead of, say, Snickers, go eat an apple. Try to minimize carbs in general, and then to try to stay healthy in general. So get enough sleep, make sure that you eat properly. You don't need to be on a very you don't need to eat exquisite crabs and then oysters to be healthy. That's unnecessary. You don't need to be vegan for that either. You can eat meat. Just make sure it's not some kind of uh, patty from a shop. Just buy a piece of meat and then cook yourself a piece of meat. Or fish or chicken, whatever works for you, or eggs, and exercise. Exercise at least half an hour a day. Do some exercise. Not necessarily high intensity training, but at least medium intensity. So I think that I'm not taking enough care of myself in the exercise department.
And how do you do your schedule like on a daily basis? Like you work 8 to 5.
No.
You work 7 days a week. You take vacations.
I wake up at 5:30. My let's go weekly schedule. I work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, those are my days. So Wednesday is off. Wednesday is off limits. I don't do anything on Wednesdays. No work, no house chores. It's like it's my day, and everybody else can wait on the other side of the door. Saturdays I try not to work as well. I try to spend time with the family, and usually Saturdays is when on Friday night, I would remove all of my digital devices, and until Sunday I would not touch it. Computer, my phone, anything. So digital Shabbat, so to speak. This would be my weekly schedule. So Wednesdays and Saturdays are off. Sundays I spend on preparing for the week, documents, paperwork, and everything that doesn't require interaction with other people. That's why I don't spend time on that during the week at all. Usually paperwork can wait. Usually a week is nothing horrible, especially if you plan ahead. My usual business day would start at 5:30. By 6:30, I'm done with my morning routines, meditation, shower, everything. By the way, taking care of yourself, meditation is a big thing. I completely forgot to mention it. Daily meditation. Doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, just do it daily and you'll see results in no time. Meditate. And then usually I would start from 6. I work till 11 o'clock. Then I spend an hour with my family, 11 to 12. And then I work from 12 till usually 5 p.m. So what it gives us roughly 10 hours a day. And then from 5 till 9 p.m. I spend time with the family and chill out.
And it's like that's how long that's been your schedule for like as long as you can remember. Is something new to you or
since I moved here for sure.
Okay.
Since
I'm guessing that's working pretty well for you.
Yeah, it works really well, especially once I've incorporated Wednesdays, and now it's Wednesday and Saturday. I don't feel like I'm working 5 days in a row. I feel like I work 2 days and I take a day off, work 2 days, take a day off.
Yeah, for me, somehow it's worked out where I work Saturdays and Sundays, but I take off like a half day Wednesday, half day Thursday.
Okay.
It works for me. Like one thing I realized, like if you take a day off during the week, you do like errands, right? Go to dry cleaning, get your car fixed, get some gas, go, and there's really no one online. Or you go on a Saturday, like there's a big difference between going to Costco or Walmart at 10 in the morning on Wednesday versus 10 in the morning on Saturday.
Exactly. You get it. And when it's a snowboarding season, there is nobody on the slopes on Wednesday.
Oh,
so lovely.
I didn't think about that.
It's the reason why it's one of the main reasons why I started with Wednesdays, actually. I was like, why don't I take it off? And then it just became an ingrained part of my routine. And you'll be surprised, nobody cares. Like people would be telling me like, oh, if I'm not online on Wednesday, who gives?
Yeah, no one cares.
No one cares. And like, actually people find it peculiar and interesting about you. Like, oh, you don't work on Wednesdays. Oh, that's interesting. That's cool. Why? And they get interested in that more than anything.
You think I have to be online? I might miss an email, but then if you do the math, you might make this up. You might get 200 emails a day, at least 175 or like I won't say spam, but like a newsletter from someone you sign up for, you're not going to read, or something for this, or Alaska Airlines has free flights for this, or maybe only few are actually like need to be
exactly.
And my thing, if the email is a really emergency, if it's an emergency, you're gonna call me, right?
Yeah, if it's an emergency, they'll find a way to contact you in a different way. You can always wait one day with any email, and if it's an emergency, people will find a way to contact you no matter what. They will call your wife, they will call your neighbor, they will find a way to contact you.
Yeah. So as your firm grows and you hire more people coming on, How are you finding people to hire? Like, what's your process be for that?
We don't hire anyone yet. We don't plan to hire anyone for fund one. For fund two, it's going to be probably, I'm talking to multiple different people who can be principals in our next firm, in our next fund within the same firm. I'm grooming some of them. I'm giving some of them different tasks, like let's write an investment memo together. Let's do this together. Let's do that together. And I see how they react, how they behave. And the ones who really are showing promise, I will just hire them. That's it. I mean, we don't have to hire anybody urgently. I'm not going to hire anybody in this urgent manner. And there are lots of people who want to get into VC. It's a buyer's market. It's not a seller's market. It's a very cool and hype industry, which actually is not, there's nothing hype or cool about it. You deal with spreadsheets and meetings, 10 meetings a day. Lots of people, for some reason, think that the moment you start doing VCs, you're flying on the first ship to Mars. You're not. You're not.
No. So you'll talk about your company some. Can you go like more detail how it got started, what you focus on now, and what your big term vision for this moving forward?
So the firm that I have in my mind, again, my whole idea was that there is a broken piece in funding of science all the way through productization and to actually shipping to the customers, right? You can get money in the initial stages from universities and grants. You can get money in the late stages from VCs and banks. In the middle, there is no man's land. Majority of investors don't know how to invest in deep tech startups. They don't know what questions to ask. They are like, that's too complicated, pass. That's too difficult, pass. And they don't even try to understand it. And I get it. And I wouldn't be doing that. If I get a biotech company, I'm like, that's too difficult, pass. Because I don't understand biology. Nobody in my team understands biology well enough for us to back this synthetic bio versus that synthetic bio. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong, in my opinion, is that there is such a limited pool of options for all the deep tech founders to focus on that we're going to do it right now with physics only. In our next fund, it's going to be physics, biology, and neuroscience as 3 pillars. And in our fund number 3, I think we're going to do the same exercise. And instead of just saying physics, it's going to be photonics, energy generation, energy storage, energy transition. Instead of just biology, it's going to be genetics, synthetic biology, industrial biology, and so on and so forth. Instead of just neuroscience, it's going to be invasive, non-invasive, non-medical. So there will be different, we'll go deeper and deeper and deeper into each subfield. So instead of going from pre-seed to seed and series A and series B, we are going to do still the same pre-seed. It's just going to be more people focused on a very specific area. This is my vision. We're going to still do pre-seed, deeply scientific process, deeply scientific due diligence in just more fields, in more narrow fields.
Are there any other VC firms doing anything like this or kind of close to it?
There are some, but none of them that I know of are as rigorous as we are in this scientific. The whole idea for us is to become the most scientific venture firm on the globe.
Okay. So I will put this question. So there's different levels of deep tech. Mm-hmm. Is there a deep tech out there that you're waiting for someone to bring it to you that haven't yet? Like, if they bring this deep tech, I'm going to invest along, of course, everything, like maybe like someone who comes like, no, we're going to figure out, how to use dark matter to time travel. We're going to figure out wormholes. Like, is there some exciting deep tech thing you're like, man, I want somebody to bring this to me so I can at least like do the due diligence and hopefully.
I'm still waiting for the fusion startup that we would love.
Okay.
Fusion for sure. Okay. Let's get this figured out. Everything else will follow.
Okay.
All of the other big physical problems are going to be limited by the amount of energy we can throw at it. So we need fusion to actually make this next leap.
And you have like a goal as how many investments you do per year?
50. Oh, per year, 12 to 15.
Okay. And for those 12 or 15, how many people you actually have to meet with? Like, I guess like 100 meetings for each investment, or how does that work out usually?
We need to look at around 100 to 150 companies to make an investment. We are only going to meet maybe 20 to 30 of them. So 20% of what we look at, we're going to meet. With maybe 2%, we're going to actually go into deep scientific due diligence, and we're going to invest in roughly 1% of them.
These meetings are like Zoom in person.
Zoom, of course.
Zoom,
Zoom,
okay.
Yeah.
Is there any like science out there where they have to meet in person to show you like in person how it works, or Zoom always good enough?
Before I make a decision, I prefer to meet a founder in person. If need be, I'll fly out to them. It's less about technology, because technology, especially science, technology, you can see machine works. Science, you need to actually do some deep digging. But for me personally, it's more important about the founder. I need to feel the person, see the person, have spent some time together. Better yet, if we can spend a couple of hours together, having a lunch, walking, doing something, having philosophical discussions about one of the big things that our first investment we went on a hike around the Buddhist monastery, and we've been talking about the consequences of the device that they bring to the world are very, very large. I would argue that there is a potential to build the perfect junkie device, and there is a potential to build the perfect torture device out of what they do. They are able to affect the brain in a very specific brain region, and you can select which brain region.
That's scary.
That's scary, and you can create something that heals depression or an anxiety disorder on a good side. On the dark side, you can create a perfect torture device, and let's light up all the pain centers in the one person's brain. It's impossible to do it with your nerves. It's impossible to, I don't know. It's impossible to make you feel that level of pain without damaging your body for hours and hours on one take. So it's a perfect torture device. And I was like, how are you going to live with the consequences of bringing this to the world? I'm not asking you about how you're going to protect your IP. I'm not asking you about how you're going to make sure that your company doesn't do shady stuff like that. I'm asking, how are you, like, your company is successful, IPO'd, 30 years past, you're on your deathbed, and you know that your company has been taken by unsavory agents and used as something malicious. How do you live with yourself? Those are the kind of questions I want to understand before I invest.
Yeah, that's a deep question. Hopefully you have the right answer.
Well, there's no right answer to this question, I think. There was a whole movie, Oppenheimer, about this.
Yeah.
There is no good answer.
Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. Beautiful movie.
I need to go see it then.
Beautiful movie. Beautiful story of a scientist. You don't have to go to a movie theater to watch it, though. Yeah. It's not traditional Nolan when you're overwhelmed with visuals and sounds. It's an actor's movie.
Okay.
Character movie.
All right. So for your VC firm, how do you plan to grow it? You have a goal like mine, like if you plan to go from 12 to 50 investments this year, like 20 to 25 next year?
No, we're going to stick to 12 to 15 investments for this fund. We're not going to expand these funds investment. There is no need to do that. We're going to grow it later on when we raise fund 2. We essentially want to raise 3 times the size of this one and do, as I said, physics, biology, and neuroscience as very clear strategies, and still do the same 50 investments in each of them, put 25 million in each of these directions, and make 15 investments in each of these.
And what's your average investment?
Oh, yeah, 200K, okay. Something like that.
Okay. I think what else? So you say you want to be like the most, what's the word you use, like most due diligence, most
scientifically savvy.
Scientifically savvy. How do you do that? Like, how do you prove to other people that you're like the most scientific savvy?
We go all in when it comes to scientific due diligence. We get not only me and my co-founder, not only our international advisory board, but also the actual experts in every specific field and subfield. If we need a specific type of numerical modeling that is used in material science, we'll find the person who wrote 15 papers on numerical modeling in material science. We know how to discover the scientists. We know how to motivate them. We know how to get them interested in working with us. And thankfully, when it comes to science, it's like with chess. If you achieve checkmate, you achieve checkmate. Yeah. With the science, is the same. If you have achieved really rigorous analysis of that and nobody can disprove it, there is nothing left to prove. That's it. We've done it. Nobody else can get the same. Maybe some other people can get the same level of rigor, but you cannot be better than that. There is a very clear ceiling to hit.
How do scientists convince other scientists to peer review their work?
A mix of ego and monetary motivation.
Okay.
Some scientists would be simply driven by the fact that they think that this is not the best approach, and I'm going to disprove that approach. Let me show you what's the better way to do it. Other scientists would be more motivated with an immediate cash gain, and anything in between of these things. Some people just like us, and they give us due diligence for free, and they just like what we do, and they feel connected to the mission. That's also a dimension that we sometimes rely on.
So the founder, like suppose the founder was trying to get investment from you. Does the school that come from matter at all? Like is a founder has a background in something from Harvard, a better fit than someone like a founder from, like we'll say, like New Mexico's Institute or junior college or science, regardless of where the background
The
is.
school itself is not as important as the amount of publications and the depth of knowledge of that person in the field. There are fantastic people who come from the proverbial New Mexico, and there are some really bad people who come from proverbial Harvard. I would argue what really matters is the last 5 years of their job and what they've published on this specific topic. We're looking for a team which has at least one scientist and at least one entrepreneur. These are usually the best teams for us to invest in. We would shy away from a team that has no scientific founder. We would probably shy away from the team that has no entrepreneurial ambition either. So it's just pure scientists. Okay, go ahead, find your grant funding or whatnot. You don't want to build a business out of that. You want to continue your research, do that. Nothing wrong with that. Fully supported, just not on our dime.
Okay. So is there anything I should ask you that I didn't, or anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you and I can have some discussions about the nature of politics and military, but I would not want this to be as a thing that we broadcast.
Can you give us your social media so people can reach out to you?
Sure, LinkedIn is the best way. Just look for me, Arkady Kulik, ARKADY KULIK. I'm happy to answer to your connection request.
And then before we get out of here, can you give us any last minute wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
Be the best version of yourself. Be the Rickest Rick.
Patty, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
And to the listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.